if you could each like speak to the elements that each of your companies bring, the respective technologies to this oil condition monitoring process. And maybe we'll start at the sensor level with you, Chris. If you could maybe provide a bit of an overview of the TanDelta Systems oil quality monitoring sensor and kind of what aspects are being monitored and how those benefit with oil condition monitoring.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, our ethos, it's all about intelligent monitoring and maintenance. So I think, building on what Adam was saying, it's all about giving the data that people need now in order to be able to manage the machines effectively. And, a key thing for our technology is we're looking at the oil holistically. So we're looking at every single aspect. We're not just focusing in on maybe one or two parameters, as I said previously, particle count, maybe looking at relative humidity, viscosity. It's not to say that they're not important factors, but when you've got a machine that's running remotely and you're relying on that data coming from the sensor, you don't want to miss a catch. You don't want to be in a position where, oh yeah, it failed, but the sensor didn't see it. So a key thing for us is having that accuracy, that repeatability, that sensitivity, so we know whatever's going on, we're going to be able to see it. And then giving that back to the customer in the form of actionable data. It's all very good giving data, but if that data is not meaningful, then it doesn't have any real value in terms of a commercial operation. We're also obsessed with reliability, because you can't be the weakest link. If you're deploying your hardware onto multi-million-pound assets, you can't suddenly say, oh yeah, but the sensor failed. So we have a very, very rigorous quality control program to make sure that when we put a sensor onto an asset, it's there for life. We expect our sensors to last for the life of the asset itself. We're not expecting it to be a consumable or something that needs to be changed. And more now, we're looking at the analytics of that data and combining it with other information that we can also scavenge from the asset itself to enrich that picture.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And so maybe Russ, could you maybe speak to how the sensor works with Hydroforce's hydraulic components and, from your perspective, what are some of the benefits of monitoring the oil quality in the hydraulic system? I know you kind of touched on it before, but if you can, go into that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, our hydraulic systems are usually like we're the bridge between the electronic controller, and then the control of all the functions on the machine. So we're a critical part of that system, and so throughout our careers in this industry, we've struggled with, we might get a complaint from the field that says something like the product's not operating the way it should be, or the function's not operating the way it should be, and it's amazing how many times it has to do with the condition of the oil. I mean, it could be the oil. Of course, contamination is a huge problem for us because our valves are made with very precise manufacturing and low and small tolerances, and sometimes when we're trying to really precisely control something, we have a very small opening in the valve that we're trying to control very accurately, and so the changes in the oil affect all that, and so our application engineers, we go in with the expertise with our customers and say, here's the ideal situation for you to be setting up your system, but we can't monitor that after the fact, right? And once it's in the field and we're starting to see maybe some issues, it's really difficult sometimes for customers to understand what has to happen next. I really like what Chris was talking about. The information has to be valuable and pertinent and make sense for them for what they're trying to do, and not just be data for data's for data's sake. So I think for us, this sensor, its design is really ideal for cartridge valve and manifold technology, because it looks like a cartridge valve and it threads right into a port right in our tank line, where, to be honest, the way the sensor is designed, the fluid flow past the sensor is ideal, and we can put it into the perfect package. And like I said, it's not only valuable for us as a manufacturer, but also for our system integrators and our distributors who, they can integrate it into their systems and add more value to their customers.
And so, Adam, could you discuss how Elevate's telematics and IoT brings kind of helps bring it all together and aids with,
Yeah,
improving system maintenance? And
yeah, for sure. So when we work with an OEM or an integrator, they're really trying to connect that whole machine, right? The
Mhm.
hydraulic package, the engine, the HMIs, the transmission, you name it. And if we step back for a second and we say we have like analog components and analog sensors that might provide us some data, then we have maybe a smart component or smart sensor that provides some information that we can pull into the platform. But then we start to get into intelligent solutions like TanDelta, where we're sharing the information back and they're providing their expertise back to Elevate that we can disperse to the OEM. That's the ultimate, right? Because we are leveraging, decades of experience in that team on the industry experts that they are. And as an OEM is connecting their machine and they want that information, they're not having to do all that work themselves, right? They partnered with the right companies that say, we're going to tie into the HydroForce valve. It's going to have a TanDelta sensor in there. We're looking at all the machine data, and we're going to be sharing it with the experts that have built these components to tell us what the health is or the quality of that piece of the machine, right? That to us is the ultimate, because we become almost like a Cisco router in essence, right? Here we are, we're collecting the data, we're sharing stuff to your service stuff, we're doing this, something happens, we pop out to the suppliers, our supplying partners, HydroForce, TanDelta, takes that information, they're the experts, they send it back to us, and we put it to the right people inside the company. That is the connected ecosystem. That are companies that are saying, we are the machine builder and integrator, we know the application better than anybody. We have the suppliers that say, we are the experts in the suppliers, and we have Elevate who's the experts in connecting the systems. And so now what we're doing is we're starting to share that information and working together as a connected ecosystem to provide the most highest valuable solution in the market. This is the pinnacle. This is exactly what we want with IoT moving forward, is understanding what puzzle piece we are and how do we complement each other to provide, the best value for the OEM and ultimately their end user.